for a long period of my life, I've had very low self-esteem, but really high, what I call others' esteem. So you realize when you're doing something that someone else, and usually someone that you respect or look up to, that something that you does actually makes them happy or they're impressed by it. And so you build up a sense of worth in that area. So your own sense of self-worth and self-esteem is built on what other people think of you rather than what you think of yourself.
This one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Prime Minister, can we celebrate what is a world-leading change that you've done here in Australia?
Full credit to you guys, because without it, I don't think the momentum would have been there for the PM to act.
36 Months is a movement for healthy teen development without the influence of social media, focused on the 36 months between 13 and 16. We were the catalyst behind the new social media legislation in Australia. We rallied more than 127,000 signatures to raise the age of social media citizenship by 36 months from 13 to 16. This podcast is for parents, teachers, coaches, the custodians of healthy teen development who still believe that an intentional 36 months could change a lifetime. My name is Greg Attwells, Director of 36 Months, and your host for this episode. Today I'm sitting down with Thorpe, one of Australia's most iconic athletes, 5 Olympic gold medals over the course of your swimming career. We talk a lot about the 36 months between 13 and 16, and at 14, you were the youngest male ever to represent Australia. Is that true?
Yeah, I was like, you're about to say something wrong. I got you.
Yeah.
That's kind of not true. I don't know if that's true. It might be. Youngest world champion at 15.
Yeah, you were the youngest ever individual male world champion. And apparently, you also won the 400-meter freestyle at every Olympic, World, Commonwealth, and Pan Pac swimming champs from 1998 to 2004.
Yeah, so I wasn't beaten in any of those in the 400 freestyle since I won it at the World Championships. Yeah. So yeah, I just turned 15, and you know, it's what's unusual about this is until becoming world champion, you know, I just thought I might be a talented age group swimmer and never progress past that. You know, the kind of child prodigy. And even, you know, in becoming world champion, I still didn't think that, you know, I was a certainty to make the Olympic team, which is in 2 years' time.
Wow.
So it's interesting that everyone else can see something in you, but you may not see yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what people won't read online is that you and I used to be in the same squad together back.
Why is that not online?
Because no one really don't have the same profile as you, my friend. But it's been a minute, and it's been really good to reconnect with you of late. When we had lunch the other day, you mentioned a number of organizations and initiatives that you're involved in lately as it relates to things like athlete wellbeing, youth mental health, etc. And I saw that you did a TV show on bullying recently. Can you share a little bit more about your work in that space?
Sure. I did a program called Bullied, and it was a while ago now. And we looked at some of the most extreme cases of bullying that was going on with school kids. And, you know, we hear about it and, you know, really trying to get to the bottom of why it happens, the psychology behind it. And, you know, we used undercover cameras and recording devices, you know, never showed a child's face. You couldn't actually identify anyone that was doing it. And, you know, I watched footage of these kids being bashed and bullied at school, and not knowing what to do and feeling powerless, and you just want to intervene, and realizing this isn't kids just being kids. This is going beyond that. And also knowing that the person that might be the bully one day is actually the victim in a different area of their lives, or perhaps even at school. There's a lot of people that are the standers by and they, don't want to say anything because they think they might be next. And it's only really when those people can stand up around someone that you can see help. So it really happens when there's a power imbalance. But what happened from that program, we had a resource which was Reach Out, which is a digital online mental health platform, completely anonymous, completely free. And I actually got involved in that organization. There was something that I wanted to do in the mental health space. I've had some mental health challenges when I was young, and throughout my life, it's something that I manage. And I wanted to do something, and this seemed like the right place for me. So I've been at that for the last 8 years.
Wow.
So Reach Out is the place, and I really wish Reach Out was there when I was younger. So for people out there that don't know Reach Out, what we do, we have a service that is anonymous and free. It's available to young people. So our classification of a young person has actually changed. We're from basically the ages of 10 to 24.
Yep.
Within that, you can have assistance, help in not only getting well, but staying well, from issues that are just like everyday kind of growing pains. Maybe it's exam stress, to things as serious as suicide. We also provide resources for parents, carers of young people as well, to be able to have conversations that they may not know how to address. For people to know how young people now approach mental health, the number one place that they go to is family and friends, which is fantastic. That's if you have family and friends around you that can support you and that you feel comfortable sharing these things with. I didn't feel comfortable sharing with my family and friends about what I was going through. The second place is the internet. This is where things should be a little bit scary for people, or, getting access or information from social media. The good news is that this is where Reach Out is, where young people are. And, the service that we provide, we have similar outcomes as what you have if you sought out clinical help. So seeing a psychologist, a doctor, or a psychiatrist. That is if you can get an appointment to one of those services. And, so we fit into, what is the modern world, contemporary world, where people are online. They're not ever offline. And as long as you have a connection, you can actually access our services. There's people that have lived experience in this area. They've been through what you've been through. And for some people, we're the first people that they speak to that have actually stopped and listened to what they have to say.
I really saw it in your voice then as you started speaking about it. Like, I can see a real, like a deep passion for the work that you're doing now, and that it's personal for you, based on your experiences.
Sure. I'm someone that believes that you need to be the change in the world that you wish to see, which is great. It's a nice philosophical kind of mantra, but it's like, how do you go about that?
Yeah.
It's looking at making life a little bit easier for someone else that may be struggling more than what you are. It's similar to the rationale for someone to actually say, well, you should come out. It's like, I don't push anyone to do that. But the reason that people are out is so that it may make it easier for someone that's struggling. I mean, I live in Sydney, so everyone makes an assumption that, and it is for most people, it's easier to come out in a city like Sydney. But I think of the kid that may live in a remote town that is disconnected from other people and feel like they're alone, that there's no one else like them. And, same kind of thing when it comes to mental health. You isolate yourself. You don't think that anyone else is going through the same challenges that you are. And when you realize that there's a huge cohort, there's a huge group of people that speak the same language as you, don't know how to describe what's going on, but they just know that there's something that's up when it comes to mental health, or they just know that, their sexuality is something that, they don't feel comfortable disclosing to the people that are closest to them.
We're a sort of a mums and dads movement, right? So the people kind of listening to this podcast are more than likely going to be parents who care about the mental health of their kids. You reflected on the fact that when you were younger, you were going through some things and you didn't quite feel comfortable sort of sharing that with sort of family at the time. Have you got any sort of advice for mums and dads of young people who might be kind of silently going through some stuff? Like, is there a way that they can be that can kind of help nurture and support their kids during that time?
Sure. So I'll start with a preface. I'm not a parent. I'm a godparent. It's the closest, and I've got a couple of nephews and a niece. It's difficult for parents because they want to be there for their children, but they also want their children to learn from, mistakes or struggles. But when it comes to mental health, it can be overwhelming. So, as I said, we have a resource which is Reach Out that you can go to, and there's information for parents that they can access it from there. But if I speak of my own experience, as a young person, I'd often start to isolate and go quiet. And my mum would think at that time that I was actually getting sick. Difference was I actually was sick. It just wasn't the sickness that she thought it was. And I don't know why, but that was my response to it. Isolation, kind of being lonely, not talking about it, not wanting to communicate with anyone. I'm still like that. That hasn't changed.
I'm like that too.
Yeah. So it's, there's some kind of, there's small social cues, but, we can even, like at Reach Out, you can learn how to have the conversation when you have your kids' full attention. They're sitting in the back of the car, you're driving them somewhere, they're looking at the back of your head, so you don't even have to look at them in the eyes. And so they're more likely to open up about something to you. And it might be just a few words here and you go, oh, it's actually right, or I can do this a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it's just making, and whether also for young people, you're more than likely to go through a mental health challenge in your life than not going through one.
Yeah.
So having a conversation about mental health early, and this is just part of your health, complex area, but it's something that we can work on together.
Yeah.
And also, knowing, and for young people to know as well, the person that you speak to about your mental health doesn't have to be mum and dad. It can be someone else.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But usually for most of us, we're really fortunate that we have great families. We have good people around us. And, most of your friends will respond to you in a way that doesn't embarrass you. They're not going to out you about what you're struggling through. And they may have gone through something different, but it's what you're comfortable with.
I love that. That's a great response. Thank you. Again, I'm thinking back to our chat the other day over lunch, and one of the things that you've kind of worked on of late, kind of in your various roles, has been kind of connecting organization funding to athlete well-being rather than performance. Can you kind of speak a little bit to that and why that shift is important to you?
Sure. So I had a role where I chaired the athletes' health, wellness, and education through the AIS. So funding comes into sport. The main funder of sport in this country is actually the government. And when I say sport, that's not just elite sport. That is all levels of sport. So in swimming, that's kids learning to swim right through to the people who are winning gold medals at the Olympic Games. The expectation that has come not only from government, but also from our community, is we want to see our athletes do well, but we also want our athletes to be well. And with that, we put in conditions around funding, around a part of funding that athletes had to be working on not only what they were doing in their competitive arena, but also on themselves so that they're more well-rounded individuals, whether that was through education, through employment, but also on their mental health. So in sport, we actually have a much higher rate of mental health issues than what the wider population have at an elite level.
Really?
The bigger question that comes from this is we don't know if sport causes it or if it's caused by sport. There's two trains of thought to this, and it may be both. We can obviously recognize that, there's increased levels of scrutiny, pressure, all of those things that may exacerbate an issue that you may have.
Yeah.
But I know from my experience, sport for me was a place where, I was safe. It was healthy. I actually think it was mostly good for my mental health. And this is talking about what we do as not only community sport, but like kind of squad training. So that's the next level up before elite performance. I was with a group of people, healthy, that were doing a similar thing to what I was.
You saw them twice a day, every day.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very good. I saw my coach, I saw my squad more than what I saw my parents. So, that's healthy. Then what's added to that, so as you have success in sport, your profile increases and your world completely changes. What you started out doing as a young person, what you fell in love with, the context of it changes entirely. So it's, it really is, it's a place that I wish I could tell people, this is the one way that you should approach it. But for every individual child, it is going to look different.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. So can I clarify it? You mentioned you don't know if sport causes those mental health challenges, or if people with or have a predisposition towards certain mental health challenges are actually attracted to sport. Is that the idea?
So what I'll clarify though, this is at a very elite level.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about grassroots or, early participation in sport, I can see all of the health benefits with very few of, those mental health challenges that people may face.
Yeah.
When you get to the elite, that's where we're at with research, is having an understanding of what's contributing. Why do we actually have a higher percentage than the wider communication? Everyone would think that we're healthy. If you're active, we know that sport, exercise is actually good for you, releases more endorphins, all of that, really good things. And yet we have issues within the elite sporting community that are far greater than what they are in the wider population.
So interesting. We talk a lot about that critical kind of 36 months between 13 and 16 as like this kind of developmental window that we're trying to sort of protect. And I want you to cast your mind back to 13-year-old Ian for a second, which was kind of when about I knew you. Maybe you were a little bit older. You had a very unique experience of early teenagehood, one that probably isn't common to a lot of people. But I wonder if you can just reflect briefly on some of the highs, lows, and everything in between.
Yeah, I think I can agree with most people on this. Being a 13-year-old is really awkward and very uncomfortable. You really don't know much about yourself. Or about the world around you. You have hormones changing. You don't know how you fit in the scheme of things. And ultimately, you just want to fit in. I didn't really have that. I stood out. Physically, I'm a big human being. And also I was, I started traveling the world when I was 12. This is weird. And all I wanted to do was fit in, and it just felt like everything I did made me stand out even more.
Wow.
And in mostly in a good way. Like, it was from being successful at a sport. But when I was 13, my parents actually realized that I was getting too good too quickly. So they made me take an extended amount of time off swimming. It actually had the reverse effect. So I took 3 months off, which if you don't swim, that takes about 6 months to get back to where you were. But, there's an athlete and a drive in me that I was like, no, I don't have to do that. It will, I'll get back to where I was quicker than that. So when I was 14, I was on the national team. So that kind of backfired on my parents, even though they had the best of intentions. But when I'm 13, I don't really think of what I was doing in sport. I think about my time at high school. Yeah, and thinking...
Where did you go to high school?
I went to East Hills Boys,
Oh, yeah.
public school. And, I was working out, where do I fit into this? Like, I don't think there's a group for me. And so I could hang out with the cool kids. I could hang out with the kids in the library. I ended up spending more time with the kids in the library because I had to do all of my homework whilst I was at school because I had to train. What I find interesting about that time is how easy it was for me to adapt to being someone that wasn't actually me, just to fit in.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, so this person does this that way, so I'll try and do that to be more like that to fit in here, or I'll be more like this. And so what information and messaging you're taking in at that stage means that you're willing to compromise what become fundamental values around yourself and what drives you and your own identity before even realizing what they are.
Yeah, so we substitute fitting in for really belonging.
Yeah, and they're two entirely different things.
Yeah.
Belonging is, it's being at peace with yourself. Fitting in is doing something for someone else's approval.
Yeah, wow. Did you have any environments as a teenager where you felt like you genuinely belonged?
Yeah, in a pool.
Okay.
Not very social. And it's not racing. For me, it's training.
Yeah, training.
Yeah, I'm a weird athlete that I actually enjoy training more than racing.
Yeah.
And, I was good at it. I was better at training than I was at racing. And, for me, everyone, like people who don't understand swimming, will talk about swimming up and down a black line. I don't see the black line. I'm not thinking of it. And it's just a poor way of looking at, a really complex sport. I actually think that what I did in the pool is more like music. I have a rhythm, I have a note that I hit, I know what's out, I will rehearse, I will practice just so that I can get the performance right when it matters. That's what my medium is to work in. And that's how I felt about it. It was seeing what I could do and how I could move in a pool.
That's a beautiful answer. I've never heard that before. Like music. That's great. There's research that suggests doing hard things or learning that you are capable of doing hard things builds self-esteem. And I asked you about this the other day, whether or not this was true for you as a kid, because I know that you did a lot of hard things. And you talked about this idea of others' esteem. Can you just unpack that a little more?
Sure. So I'm not going to dispute the research. And overall, I actually think it's probably accurate for most people. For myself, I don't know if it did build self-esteem because I feel as though for a long period of my life, I've had very low self-esteem, but really high, what I call others' esteem.
Good.
So you realize when you're doing something that someone else, and usually someone that you respect or look up to, that something that you do does actually makes them happy or they're impressed by it. And so you build up a sense of worth in that area. And if you have perfectionist tendencies like I do, this is incredibly unhealthy because the level of your own expectations skyrockets to a level that you will never be able to accomplish that. So your own sense of self-worth and self-esteem is built on what other people think of you rather than what you think of yourself.
Is there do you see a parallel there with something like social media, like this idea that sometimes these platforms can reinforce others' esteem, not necessarily self-esteem, because of likes and comments and what kind of the community is
Yes, I can
affirming?
I can see it. But I take a nuanced view on social media.
Yeah.
I'm not all that active on social media. I use it. It's kind of fun. I stay connected with my friends. Yeah, that's about it. But I also know how, I post. I post when it's a good picture of me or I'm having fun, I'm enjoying my life. I don't post when I'm down. I don't post what's an average day. Because I'm like, that's boring. So it is a snapshot of my life. It's a phrase that a picture tells 1,000 words, but those 1,000 words might not be all the truth in what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So I look at what social media can be. So for some people, social media might be their only connection out to the rest of the world. And it's incredibly powerful for that individual. It may also be the place where people are able to create their own narrative around who they are.
Yeah.
And this is part of their identity.
Mm.
Even if it is, built on a false sense, there's probably some benefits to that. But overall, from what I've heard, what other people's experience is, it can be a really toxic place. We all know this. What we've done with social media is kind of supersize what our social interactions would be with people. So rather than being from your local area and perhaps having some level of notoriety for good or bad reasons, you've actually exposed that to the world. And in doing so, you've amplified what level of criticism you may come over, tall poppy syndrome, and then also what might be, issues around body image, around the way that you look, the way that you speak, how smart you are, how physically talented you are, what direction, everything. You have opened up the world to perhaps liking you, but what more people pay attention to is people not liking you. When you are living off what is liked by other people, it becomes very easy to start living in what would be others' esteem. And looking for what is the next thing to do that actually impresses them rather than the thing that you want to do, and being who you want to be. And then you start to get lost. You get confused by the person that you might be on social media to the person that you are at home around close family and friends. And when those two things become too far apart, you get lost and you have no sense of self.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so profound and true. I'm really loving the depth in this conversation, by the way. Like it's a side of you that I haven't, experienced to date. We were always just talking shit as kids anyway. But
listen, that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. I'm glad I wasn't this way when I was younger.
It's true.
It means I actually enjoyed some of my childhood.
Yeah. No, but I'm really appreciating it. Have you got like a core memory that still feels quite vivid to you that has shaped the way that you show up in the world today?
Yeah. So look, it's a swimming thing, but it was when I became world champion. I was a kid. I've done some media at this stage, but I walked into a press conference and I can remember the overwhelming sense of fear and anxiety that I had when I walked in the room.
Wow.
And it was because I was overwhelmed by how many people were there.
Yeah.
And I get that it's a big deal. Like, I understand that part. But I had, what was a young person who's not sure of themselves and didn't know where their life was, even though this is an extraordinary moment.
Yeah.
And walking in and having to gulp and then take a breath. And I realized this is going to be part of my life now, and how to change. And then it was just a moment to pause and then actually saying to myself, I will be good at this. And walking up and and owning the room.
Wow.
It wasn't perfect, but it was a conscious decision that I made that I had to be good at this. And I still can't believe that I was able to do that at 15. That part, not becoming world champion.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah. The facing up to the media was the moment. That's interesting. Having intentional breaks without distractions helps us uncover the best version of ourselves. Our premium partner, KitKat, stands for better breaks, purposeful pauses or moments to switch off without life's distractions in all their forms. A purposeful break can maintain a positive mindset, clarity of thinking and focus, and bring us back to tasks feeling more refreshed, present, connected to others. In a world that has never been more digitally connected, what are some of the ways you like to take a better break?
Sure. There's a few. I've only learned this recently. This is one that I wish I learned earlier. If you're having a bad day, you can actually reset it. So it's pausing and stepping away from it, taking some time out. And most people can find 10 minutes. 10 minutes to get out of your own head and realize that you can actually shift the way that you're thinking. That challenge with mental health, sometimes it doesn't work out, but it's worth giving it a go. And I found that, and I just reframe, and I usually end up laughing at myself at all of the things that have gone wrong in that day. And then I actually get back my afternoon, rather than having it and going on with the rest of my day, not being as good at it or as efficient at it as what I'd like to be.
Wow.
And then it just building up, it got worse, going to bed that night, thinking about the whole day, not sleeping well, wake up the next morning, and you've started off a day poorly then as well. So that's one thing that I do. I also I try and plan a trip, and it can be a road trip with friends just for a long weekend. It can be a trip overseas, but I'm always planning something to look forward to. And you can plan a trip in an hour if you want to, or you can plan a trip over 6 months, 12 months or longer. And having that, that thing to look forward to when you may be struggling, it kind of becomes the goal. It's the aspiration. And if you work hard, it may be for your hard work, or it may just be to be able to spend time with the people that you don't get to spend enough time with.
So that 10-minute reset that you do in a day, do you have a particular activity that you like to do, or is the point not to have an activity, but it's just to sort of be intentional about resetting the story that you're telling yourself?
Sure. So it's anything to get out of your own head.
Okay.
And I can meditate.
Yep.
So I did that. That's my way of doing it really quickly. If I had more time, I'll do it for longer. Going for a walk is great, but don't go for a walk to get your step count up. Go for a walk.
It's got an agenda.
Yeah. I do that too, but different reason. But going for a walk and actually just walking around the street and trying to make yourself become present. So actually try and notice 3 things that you haven't seen before. What that will do, it's the easiest way I've found to be able to just get out of your head. You're actually living in the moment. If you're in the moment, you're not in your head.
So don't go for a walk, go for a wander.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. 2 more questions. Every week we have listeners that submit kind of questions through our social channels. And I thought this one would be a good one to ask you. I mentioned before that we're a mums and dads kind of community. And so someone wrote in and said, as a parent of a teenager who is good at sport, I want to encourage and resource them in something that they've got potential in, but fear I can sometimes cross a line, become too pushy, heaping unhelpful expectations on their shoulders. How can I be supportive of their development without connecting their approval, belonging, identity to their achievements?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's the most often parent question I'm asked about sport.
Yeah.
There's a balance to this because there's some great things that you can learn from sport, but you can learn those things in other places as well. So I'll begin with that. Sport's not the only area. Kids having more than one interest outside of school is probably pretty important. So it's not just one. That's a good starting point. The second one, my parents did this. My sister used to swim as well. And any sport or any activity that we took outside of school, if we made a decision at the start of a season, we had to complete that season. But if at the end we didn't want to go for another year, we could actually move out of that into something else or just move out of it. That choice was ours. So it gave a balance around, parents wanting something for us and wanting us to do well with it, to us having a level of control over what we wanted to be doing and realizing that if I commit, I have to see this through.
Yeah.
There's a great lesson in that. Another thing that my parents had to do, so I used to get up really early in the morning, you know what it's like. They never set the alarm. My sister or I set the alarm, and we had to wake them up, not the other way around. So it's putting some of the onus onto the child that they are responsible for what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's the level of support that you need. But also, if you actually hear what you're saying to your child and you think of what you would like to have heard when you're at that age, you can realize that it's not the right way that you're going about it. And also know that if we ask 3 different people what you heard from that person and what they said, we'd probably get 3 different answers. And if you assume that the one that you hear, the child hears, is actually the worst version of yourself, that's the one that they're going to hear.
Yeah, wow. I love that thought about kind of cultivating ownership and responsibility, and agency. I think that's awesome. All right. We're going to finish with word association tennis. So I'm going to say a random word. You respond by saying
Try to read upside down now.
Whatever pops into your head. So I'm going to say something, just a random word. You respond with whatever pops into your head. I'll respond with whatever pops into my head. And we'll go back and forth for 30 seconds and try and avoid the cutter.
Okay. I'm not good at ball sports.
All right. I'm going to start with wander.
Beach.
Swim.
Pool.
Music.
Love.
Belonging.
Home.
Identity.
Self.
It's a nice way to end.
Cool.
I love that.
Thanks, mate.
The reason why I like doing that exercise at the end is it ends up just sort of nicely recapping the conversation that we just had, It just sort of touches on some things. So that's good. But I really enjoyed chatting with you. There's so much depth to what you gave us. Thank you so much for those insights and for the transparency and honesty of your reflections. It's been really, really good.
Pleasure, mate.
Awesome.
More tennis for me.
Yeah, more tennis.